All
Welcome
right.
again to Model 3 training, which is specifically on tables in Business Central. So yes, can you see my screen, please? Confirm you can see my screen, please.
Yes,
Yes, we
I
can.
can. We can.
Okay. So as I said, tables are fundamental objects in any database at all, because that's the bedrock of all your data. That's where you store your data. That's where you store them in case of you want to retrieve them, probably for analysis purposes, or for visualization purposes, or probably for functional purposes. So you get and in the ERP system, it is also very important to have a table because we are talking about financial data. And most times when it comes to the ERP ecosystem, history is very important for audit and control check. So for us to have all this data stored for auditing, we need a table. So yes, so there are objects in which you store and manipulate data. When you create a new database, you begin by building a table. Later, you create a page, as I said, and a report in order to access and view the data in the table. So without a table to store your data, where do you want to get data to be able to present in your report? Or where do you want to get a data? Where do you want to get the data to be able to present in your visualizations? You get that kind of thing. Or the input you get from the pages you created that connect, where do you want to store them? You get. And in case you want to reference back to all these data, where do you want to look up to? So that's why the tables are very important. So a table can be visualized as two-dimensional matrix consisting of a column and a row. In the table, each row is a record and a column is a field. Yes. A table consists of two parts, the table data and the table description. The table data is the part users often think as comprising the database because it contains the actual record and their data fields. The layout and the properties of the fields, however, are specified by the table descriptions. The table description isn't directly visible to users. Yes, so let me go to the our training solution folder. Yes, so from the last time, my colleague was able to like give you an overview of what the table concept looks like in Business Central. Yeah. So now, as I said, the table consists of several parts. Description. Let's talk about description. This you might not see this from the front end because most times we don't really access the tables from the front end. We only access the other guys, which are the pages, the reports, and several other things. The table is just the bad guy that just do his thing low key and feed everybody as you request. You get that kind of thing. So then we have several fields on it also, which comprises of the data in the table. So these are the guys that will now determine how the data look in the table you get. So a table is nothing without a field. A table is nothing without a field. A table is nothing without a record. A table cannot be anything without these two guys, the fields and the record. You get. So let me go back to that manual again. Hope I'm not talking too fast. Please confirm that though.
No, it's okay.
Okay. So yes, as my colleague said, yes, let me zoom this out for you. You can see in Business Central, let me just go to Business Central. Hold on. Let me try and sign it to Business Central for you. Just hold on. Hold on, please. Let me just sign it to Business Central so I can. Okay. Okay, so yes. So let me switch my row. So we can, okay, so yes, yes. So the, let me use vendor for you so you can vendor list. So yes, so this is an example of a representation of a table on the front end. You will not see the table directly, but this is a page that is mirroring a data in a table. So yes, there's a table called the vendor table that would have come in this structure. Sorry, in this structure. Yes, would have come in this structure, vendor name, vendor code, so many fields. But then with a page, you can always see this like this. So this is what we call the column. This straight line here is called the column, according to how my, sorry, the row, according to how my colleague designed it. So the rows are representing each record within the table, and the columns are representing each field within the record. So we can have 3 million records, and we can have probably like five fields within the record. So record is peculiar to a row, and a row is peculiar to a table. So do you get what I'm trying to like say? So for this line now, this line is one record in a table. This line is another record in a table. This line is another record in a table. This line is another record in a table. And all of them have the same field name, but different field value. So now this is a table of a vendor that is mirroring each vendor that has been stored within the table. So yes, so when you design a table, you assign a characteristic to it, such as a name, which we already have something like that here, a name which is called the student profile table for identification purposes and for assessing purposes. If you want to access the table from anywhere else, probably you want to use it for a report, are you going to just say, system, give me that table I created without? So yeah, because of identification and referencing, we need to assign a name to our table so that we can be able to access it throughout the solution. Yeah. So description is what we give it most times to furthermore describes the functionality of, or the characteristics of the table, or the attribute of the table, to say, okay, what is this table meant for? If it's vendor, I can put just vendor data table here. Or if it's probably a table that's going to be housing, like example, like now we have student profile record. Now you see we have student profile here and we have student profile record here. So this is saying this is a student profile table, but then this table description is saying, the caption is saying it will be, it's called student profile record. This is responsible for storing our student record. Now, it's for storing our student record. There might be another table entirely for doing some other functions again that will still be using this table. So how are we now going to do all those things? Because if we do not name our table or give it a description, you get. So naming a table and giving the proper description is quite very good for, is a good convention for designing a table, because it gives anybody that comes to the table the idea of what the table is doing, even without going to it. You can understand, okay, well, this table I'm inside right now is just for collecting student record. Do you get? So also an ID, which is an identification number. So an ID is also unique. In Business Central, table IDs are very unique and table names are very unique. So because we don't want a situation where table begins to clash, or you want to access one table, and because of the uniqueness of data within each table, it is advisable for IDs to be unique, so that when you call it, It's not like you're calling one ID and 10 other tables are showing. How do you differentiate them? But when an ID is unique to a table, it means once you call down an ID, it belongs to that table and you can access everything that happens with that table. So you can also assign many characteristics such as name, ID number, data type, and initial value. This is for the field, and the field it contains to each field, correct? When they're here, so as my colleague has said the other time also, we said the structure of a field within a table is that it has an ID, it has a name, and it has a data type. So an ID, a name, and a data type, then other things cannot come in as probably properties of the table or of the field. The same way we have properties of table. So yes, we have different type of table. Before I jump that, we have different type of table within Business Central, but the one we normally use is the normal type. By standard, you won't get this when you create a table, but by default, it is the normal type of table we have. But we have several other types of table which are meant for several different purposes. You can see we have the CDS, CRM, Exchange, external SQL, Microsoft Graph, normal, and temporary table. So most times we work with normal and temporary table. And temporary table, as its name temporary, probably just to hold a record within a session, or within a compiling session. So it means if you are using a temporary table, probably you want to quickly store something there, you want to quickly mirror another table while you work on another table within a section. It's not like when you finish that session, that table will be active. No, a temporary table is always only active within a session. So when you start a session, a session, what I mean by a session is this: if you have a block of code, probably let's say this is a block of code right now, and you run the block of code, and there's a temporary table within this block of code. That temporary table will only be accessed during the compilation of that your block of code. The moment when the compiler stops and exits, that table expires. So it is within that section. So that's the only reason why we use temporary table. Probably want to use it for calculation purposes, and temporary table also they have fields, and they actually have the same characteristics as this table, only that they don't retain data for a long time. They only retain the data during a section. But the normal table will retain data for as long as you want it to do, as long as you want it to retain that data. So yes, also as we've been able to say, fields are quite important also within a table, because these are the things that give you that help you. Fields are the ones that individually help you hold the several data that come in within a column, within a column. You get. So if in case like now we say, okay, matric number, first name, probably want to add also want to add the last name here. And okay, last name should not be more than 50. And let's say last name is Taju. So yes, so you can get. So it means if 100 people are accessing a page that is linked to this table and they are keying in data, each of them will have a unique matric number, a unique first name, and a unique database. So for each of those people that are putting in data, they all have their data in this format. So that is what looks like. That is why we have this guy. See, let's take this as an example. Let's say this is the matric number of a thing. You can see this. Let's say this is the first guy. The first guy that filled his details. Second guy that filled his details. Third guy that filled his details. So like that, if there's no field to actually house this, or you're probably housing it with one thing, you get your data not organized. So as a result, fields are quite important for organization of data also, and for structuring of your database. Well, so yeah, let's move on to, so yes, also he said all these characteristics are stored in the table description, where you can save the table design, the information in the table description is used by SQL Server. Now, there's one thing we need to understand here, that tables are used. They are actually on the SQL Server engine. So Dynamics ERP and Microsoft Business Central is actually seated on. It uses, let me say, it uses the SQL Server for data spooling and data connection. So there's this part of when if you use on-prem, there's the version of Business Central is called on-prem. There's a service in the system we call the SQL Server. When you are installing it, when you're installing the package, it installs an SQL Server, not because of anything, because that is the engine that you use to actually control the tables and every other thing. So yes, as it is stated here, that the information in the table description is used by the SQL Server and occasionally by database user who need information about the table structure. So should in case the SQL Server is wanting to do some certain things, it uses the IDs and the other table properties to actually do all those things. In terms of probably you want to run some queries you want to run some queries, you want to do some other things on the server, you can be able to access them with the table description. Because on the SQL Server, we don't have ID. On the SQL Server management side, we don't access tables with ID. We access tables with name. We access tables with name. It is only BC it's only within BC we access tables with ID. On the SQL Server side, I think let me pull up on SQL Server side for you so you can understand.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't access with username, because I think the table ID is unique to Business Central, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the table
ID
name,
is
this
go
this
ahead.
particular ID, the table name is unique. It's always unique across all the tables in a particular database. So when you want to access it, you use the name, not the ID. Like you won't see this ID when you go to the database itself on MySQL.
Okay. So yes, let me just show you something from here. So you should know the difference between so yes, this is how SQL sees all the tables in Business Central. You can see there's nothing like ID here. There's nothing like ID here. We only have table names. We have the main database dot several suffix, then the table names involved. So in case in the part where you run a new query here, you want to probably hold on, let's try something so you can see what I'm trying to say. You can see what I'm trying to say. Hold on. Okay, so you can see now. You can see from here to here. From here to here, you can see that SQL doesn't access the data with ID. So there's a table in the Business Central that's called item attribute value. So you access it by the table name, not the table ID. So that's why it is different. But then it is also needed to actually run most of the process within Business Central, the SQL Server. So yes, occasionally by database users
Chineye, are you raising your hand or you have raised it down?
I was raising my hand, but I just remembered I have to ask the question at the end of the session, so let me just leave it.
Okay. So yes, occasionally by database users who need information about the table structure. So in case you are trying to create what's it called, a page or a report or a list, whatever. Now Business Central now gives you the ability to actually, you can access a table by its name or its ID. So it is two different ways in Business Central. But on the SQL side, it's only the table name you can use to access it. So in Business Central, within Business Central, we can access a table with the ID or the name, the correct name. So yes, the table, the description makes the database flexible as it lets the system access tables with different structures. The database can extract the definition of the table structure from the table description, thereby correctly assessing the table. Structures in a table. So structures in a table have 4 sections. The first block containing the metadata of the variable table, such as table type, which we already have here, such as table type, which is around this block, is always around this area. This is where you specify the properties of the table. Then we have the field section, describes the data elements that makes up the table, such as the names, which also we have here, which is the second part. So this is the part 1, and this is the part 2. Part 2. Then the structure 2, structure 2. Then the third structure, the key section, contains the definition of keys, which we have in the third section here. And we have the final section, details the trigger and codes that run on the table. So yes, apart from several other things that you can do within the table, you can also write your custom functions within the table and do all those other things. So now, aside from that, we all know that let's say this, that Business Center is event driven. So it means for everything you do, there's an event handling it. So for tables, we have the table triggers and we have the field triggers also. So triggers, like, let me start from the table. So triggers, like for the table, we have the on inserts, on modify, on delete, on rename. So on inserts, as we all know, we know what triggers are, except, okay, let me explain. On triggers means, on insert means if there's an insertion event in this that's coming into this table, this block is what you used to know. This is like the guy that was, okay, this something is happening. Do you want to do anything? So if you are going to be doing anything, then you can do whatever you want to do within the beginning and the end. And if there's a modification event on the table, you can also, if you want to do anything within the modification event, or you want to, you can also do that within this block also. And if there's a deletion event triggered on the table, what do you want to do? If you want to do anything, you can also put that into it. Then rename is also a trigger. You can also rename, runs when the user tries to rename a record. So if you want to rename a record, there's also a trigger that handles this. And if you want to do anything within that trigger, you can also undo your code within that part. Then for the fields, we have several triggers for fields. You know, fields are what most times fields are what we see most times on the front end. So you can know that the triggers that will be there are triggers that might want to be I don't know how to put it anyways, but we have several triggers for the for fields. I think, let me just show you some other triggers. So yes, so we have trigger to validate. What does this do? Now, validate means the moment you insert a data into this field, what do you want to happen? So the moment you insert a data, Business Central is notified that, okay, somebody is bringing in data. So if there's anything you want to do with that data that's coming in, it is handled within this what's it called, this trigger. Then we have trigger or lookup. There are some functions where you want to probably there's a lookup on the field, and you click it. When you click that lookup, what do you want to happen? And also, there's something called table relation on field, the property that you might want to know. So table relation means, let's use this as an employee. That's a number. Okay. So now table relation is a property of a field that you might also want to know. It's just a basic. So what we are trying to say is this: there's another table within the system that we want. Probably, let's say, first of all, we have let's put it like this: we have a record of all the students when the moment they are coming in, they don't have matric number, you know, right? They don't have matric number the moment they are coming in. So at that point, probably the department that's handling the incoming of students, and they want to like save, they want to have that record within the database. They'll just save students with probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 to so many numbers they want to you get. So probably there's now another department entirely that when the students have passed post QME, they want to start assigning probably assigning what a matric number to them. So they don't want to go over to start writing names or writing all those things again. There's already a table that has those names. So they want to like, okay, fine. At this point, the moment I select this name, the system will automatically generate. So for a field, let me show you what it is. For a field within the system, I think we have something like that here. Let me just show you. So my explanation might not be that good, but then table relation means you are attaching a table's data to a field so that the users can have the ability to scroll through that that table to pick a data. So let's use this guy as an example. Okay, let me just create a new one. Probably we don't have. So by standard, oh, what's happening here? Okay, sorry. I think we don't have access to create any but what I'm trying to say is this. Once you table relate a field to a table, by default, the field have access to this table. So if there are records within this table, you can always view it within the field. So, and once you select that record within the field to replace the value of that field, you can always undo whatever wants to happen within the triggers. So we have other triggers, lookup, and we have, hold on, let me see. Let's see. Okay, I think it's just
it's only lookup and validate.
It's page that has
lookup
more.
and validate, yeah. Page that has more, that's true. So yes. So triggers within. So there are other properties you might want to. Now, the properties for each field is determined by the data type of the field. So for integers, there are some properties that are available for integer. We can always find that out as we go on. For decimal, there are some properties that are only peculiar to decimal data type. For blob, we have some what's it called? Properties that are just peculiar to data. Now let's see some properties here. If you do like this, you can see we have so many properties here. But these properties you are seeing are only peculiar to this data type text. If you check for integer, you will see another data type. If you check for decimal, you see another data type. So whatever field you are using, there are several properties that are attached to that data type that is attached to the field. So do you get what I'm trying to explain? Bolawo and Chi.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. So yes. So the next section is triggers. I just explained triggers. We have the table triggers, which is the ONISAT. Okay, so I think there's a example here. So ONISAT. So ONISAT, what do we want to do for ONISAT here? What we are saying is probably want to call a function. This is function, and we want to do so many other things when somebody tries to insert into the table. So that is for ONISAT. Or modify. When somebody modifies the table, what do we want to do? We want to do this with it. So the moment somebody tries to modify the table, this happens. It triggers this to happen. So that's why triggers are very important, because triggers allows you as a developer to be able to play around with how the data are stored in your tables. It allows you to actually manipulate so many things on how data are stored in your tables and how the structure of your table looks like also. So then we have on delete. When somebody tries to delete, what do we want to do? Do we want to check There's some checks you might want to do. Does the person have access to delete the record, or does the person have access to so many things you might want to do within the trigger? So these triggers are there for you to be able to control the functionality of everything that is linked to that table in terms of reports, pages, and probably some things that probably other things that are linked to the tables. You get. So on rename and few triggers, as I've explained, on validate and on lookup. So on validate, as said here, the trigger is run after the default validation behavior when the data is entered into the field. During the default validation behavior, the system checks the data type of the value entered, match one defined for the field. So yes, there are some standard checks that happens within Business Central that you don't need to cater for yourself. But for some local for some languages, you might be the one to write those checks yourself. But for Business Central, by standard, every data type has you can every day when you insert a value in a field, the system checks if the data is corresponding to the data type of that field. If it is not, it throws a value, if what's it called, an error. But then you can furthermore do your analysis. You can furthermore write your checks within the validation trigger. You get. But then by standard, if you try and put texts in a field where you are supposed to have integer, you'll get an error. If you try and put there's some data type that accept multiple values, like the code. The code can accept one, can accept numeric, and is alphanumeric. But then there's some that for text can accept, it regards everything that comes into it as a text. So in case even you are putting in numbers, it regards as text. But then there's some decimal, integer, and some other different data type that you cannot mess around with. The system automatically gives you an error. So you can see the function of the validate. So if now this guy is supposed to collect a data formula is also a data type that you can use to get a date. So in case you now put something that is not within what this guy can see, they've already handled the check here. Say if current field is greater than 0, then test open field current. Now date conflict check. This is just to check, extra check. By standard, I think the system is going to check for you if that thing is corresponding with what's supposed to be in that field. Then we have on lookup. You can use a trigger to define a field lookup that will be used in place of a default lookup when using this trigger. Follow the approach. Use the field value to determine what filter or other parameters to apply. Run the lookup page as a modal page. Transfer the value the user selects back to the field when the user chooses OK. If an error occurs in the trigger code, the lookup page will close. So I think this is quite this right now. You might not understand this line right now, but as we go on, you will definitely understand what this is all about. So aside from this, let me show you something. Aside from this, where we have the table relation. So this table relation is just like a lookup also, like a lookup. So it means you are looking up to a table that has a data. So without these two, you can also do another lookup where you do you write it within the lookup, what's it called, the lookup trigger. Then you do whatever you want to do with it. So also going down to the field extension trigger. Field triggers are events that occurs on the field level when a user tries to impute information. The field, we have two types of field trigger: on, before, validate. Okay, yes. So by default, the Business Central allows us to extend existing tables and existing fields. But then there are some triggers we cannot access in the extensions. If by standard that this table we are creating is a standard, okay, let me just list out some this and some triggers. You can't access trigger on validate on an extension page. You can only access trigger on before validation or after validation. And also trigger on inserts for tables. You can only on after insert or before insert, on before modify, on after modify, on before delete, on after delete, if it is a standard table. But if you are the one that if it's a custom table, you can still come into your code and do whatever you want to do. But the moment you are extending a table, you cannot access the base triggers. I don't know, I call them base triggers anyways. They are base triggers. Then you can't access the base triggers. You can access the extensible triggers. And again, if you are creating a page, before you can extend the page, there's a property that you need to put here. The property is called extensible true. By default, it's always true. By default, it's always true. Yes, I think by default, yeah. By default, it's always true. So if it is false, it means you cannot extend the trigger. So you can't extend the page. So example of what I'm trying to say is this. Hold on. So I don't know. Just hold on. I think I have okay. I think let me just try and see if I can do something. I can extend the table so you can see how what I'm saying here. Let me just use the wizard. Extension, customer. Let's give this guy test. Test you. Okay, let's not call it test you. Let's call it a something. Let's call it batch number. Batch number. Let's give it code 20. Okay. Okay, so yes. So now the reason why we are able to extend this guy is because the table extension property is true. That is why. Okay, yeah. So by default, extension property of the table is true. Extension property of a table is true. So yes. So the reason why we are able to extend this table is because the property is true. If the property was false, we will not be able to. We will not be able to see it in table extension. Now, so there's something again I want to show you. When I said about when you extend a page, you cannot. There are some triggers you can access. Let's say we want to extend a field within this table called now you can see the triggers we have available here. We have on after validate, on before validate. But by standard in this table, if you check this table right now and check number, you can see you have on validate because this is a standard table. But then because we extend it, we don't have access to that on validate trigger anymore. We only have access to on before and on after. So on before validate, we can write our code and say, okay, on before the system validates the value that is coming in, we want to do something, we want to append our code to it. And also for the table, you can see all the triggers. Okay, we can still access on the search trigger. Oh, wow. So you can see we have on before modify, on before rename, on before insert, on before delete, on after rename, on after modify, on after insert, and on after delete. So most times when you extend a table, you don't have access to the base triggers anymore. You have access to the on before, on after triggers within the table and for field. But then if you create a new field, it means you have access to what? The unvalidate, because it is a new field, it's a custom field that I just added to it. So you can see that just after delete. Yes, so you can see that this is the convention of how we assess triggers within the within Business Central. You can see on before validate, on after validate. It applies after the existing. Defining a table, defining field in table objects. To define a field simply means using the item IntelliSense by the TF. So yes, there's a shortcut. It's called a shortcut. I don't know. I call it shortcut anyways. But then to create a field, you can just do TF. It gives you the snippet, and you can go ahead and do whatever you want to do. And also, if you want to create a table, also TD, I think it gives you table. TB, yeah, TB, sorry, TB. So TB gives you table. Then you can see the structure. It gives you a table structure, and you can go ahead and do what you want to do. So with the IntelliSense, you save yourself a lot of stress by writing some things manually. You can just always use your shortcuts, and but then if for some personal reasons you might not want to use it, but then when you get there, anyone you want to use, you can always beckon on that and use it. So working with table objects in AL, only tables with the extension property set to true can be extended. We explained that already. The table extension object allows you to add extra fields to the change or to change some properties of the table provided by Business Central. In this way, you can add data to the same table and treat it as a single table. Exactly. The extension means you are extending a table, and you are extending not just the table, you are extending both the properties and the functions of the table, and also the structure of the table also. So in Business Central, you can always extend the table to as much as you want and how you want to do it. So table extension objects limits. Only tables with extension property can be set to true can be extended. And yes, that has been explained correctly, that you can only extend a table that the property is set to true. So table type equals normal. Yeah. So yes, we understand that there's some let me just give you a recap, because that's basically everything you need to know about table. So the recap is their table is divided into different parts: the metadata, the fields, the key, and the triggers. And fields also are divided into three parts too also. When you declare, first of all, you declare the ID, the name, and the data type. Then under you have the properties. The same way we have table, we have properties. Now, they have their own properties also and their triggers. So you can always write their triggers and their properties. So I think your questions can come in right now. Confirm you were able to at least get something from everything that was taught.
Yes.
Yes, so you have a
Yes,
question.
yeah.
Can we?
Okay. The question I had, has been explained, because I think it was maybe kind of a mistake. You are talking about accessing data from. We were initially talking about accessing a table without a table ID. Then I think we mistakenly now said accessing data from a table without a table ID. So I was trying to get the clarification, but finally you later clarified.
Accessing a table without the table ID. No, I didn't say. I said Business Central, you can access a table with
Access.
ID or its name.
No, what I'm saying is, okay, yes.
Do you get? I said you can access a table by its ID or its name.
Yes.
How do you want to access a table when you don't have, when the table does not have ID? Are you going to call it from? Are you going to use call it from the spirit word?
No, what I'm saying is, I was talking about like or you are talking about MySQL then, not Business Central.
Oh,
So I
okay.
think, yeah, it was just just a position of ideas, but I understood, yeah.
Yes, I said for SQL, you can access the table by names, not ID. Right? Chi,
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Sorry, network was, but what did
did
you
you hear
say?
me?
Yes, I didn't really
I said
hear you.
within
Was breaking
SQL,
up.
we can access tables by name, by their names.
Yes, 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 sir. By their names.
Exactly. Yeah. So, Bolan, do you have any question? Any other question?
No. It's fine. It's been a very good session and all. Thank you.
Okay. So,
All right, please.
in
Would
the absence
you
of no,
okay?
okay.
Would you allow the this thing to would you please send us this recording too, so we can also revise it too?
Yes, you get the recording link.